First at 5. From the University of Florida's College of Journalism and Communications, you're watching WUFT News.
At least 2 people are dead as severe weather passes through the southeastern United States. Welcome to WUFT News First at 5. I'm Ophelie Jacobson.
And I'm Kendall Brandt. More on that weather in just a moment, but we begin with late breaking news.
That's right, a developing story. Gainesville police arrested UF backup quarterback Jalen Kitna today. A press release says the case involves the sharing of images on a Discord account that were flagged as child porn. The account was traced to Kitna, a redshirt freshman. GPD says he told a detective he remembered sharing 2 images and thought they were legal, though they triggered a shutdown of the account. Police say a preliminary check of electronic devices found 3 additional images that could be classified as child sexual abuse material. We'll have more on this story in sports.
We're tracking the storms that are devastating the southeast as they make their way toward our coverage area. NBC's Sam Brock is in Mississippi surveying the damage left overnight.
I'm in Steens, Mississippi, which is part of Lowndes County. This is one of the hardest hit areas from this tornado outbreak. Of the roughly 24 reported tornadoes, 17 of them in the state of Mississippi, and many people waking up to this kind of a reality so tragic, where you're seeing houses with the siding that's just been ripped off, what appears to be an electric pole puncturing the side of this house. Luckily, I was told by some of the neighbors here that the man who lives here, in his 60s, just happened to not be home at the time. The same is true for the couple that lives, his sister, on the other side of the property. Their home is collapsed. They were out of town, so some fortunate circumstances there. Here, county officials tell me that they actually had distress calls where they were going into various homes on this stretch, saved about 6 or 7 people last night. It was not as fortunate in Montgomery County, Alabama, where we've learned the first 2 fatalities are now confirmed after a tornado struck down there at 3:30 in the morning. Though officials in that area say that the heroic actions of first responders unquestionably saved lives. As for what's going on the ground right now, you'll see periodically some of the power crews coming by trying to restore electricity. Some 50 to 60,000 customers in the region did lose power. And then here in Lowndes County, officials are going door to door among somewhere in the neighborhood of 40 or 50 homes to try to assess the damage and help those folks get back on their feet. Sam Brock, NBC News.
Taking a look at the weather locally, we have WUFT's Shawn Humphrey in the studio.
Shawn, what can we expect in the next few hours, and are there any warnings we should be aware of?
Well, no warnings here in Alachua County or in Gainesville, but earlier today we had a strong thunderstorm to begin our afternoon, and we still see some of those clouds around now. It's still overcast, winds down to 0, so it's calm outside, thankfully. We're not seeing too many effects from those storms anymore, but as you can see on our radar here, these storms passed through the Panhandle earlier today. Those are some of the same squalls that were affecting a lot of the southeastern United States, and they dissipated as they eventually made their way to Alachua County. And that cold front has brought some significant temperature changes over the past 24 hours, 8 degrees in Gainesville and down 11 degrees in Lake City and other parts of the Panhandle. And as you look at the rest of the day, it's going to stay cloudy. And you take a look at this infrared satellite, you can kind of see what it looks like from space. You know, these clouds over much of the area in Alachua County and other parts of north central Florida. But those clouds should be dissipating overnight. Tomorrow, overnight lows around 54 degrees. Back to the desk.
Thanks, Shawn. 2 children were reported missing by the Marion County Sheriff's Office on Monday night. WUFT's Alexa Herrera is in the studio to tell us more. Alexa?
The Marion County Sheriff's Office deputies are looking for 12-year-old Arissa Johnson and 11-year-old Nariah Johnson. The 2 were last seen at a house in the city of Ocklawaha. The Department of Children and Families said it believes the children are with their mother, Amanda Villa. She is court-ordered to not have unsupervised contact with them after she spent time in jail for a felony conviction in 2014. Villa was also arrested for battery in 2020, but that was later dropped. Deputies are still in search of the children. Anyone with information on their location should call 911, and you can follow the story on WUFT.org. But for now, back to the desk.
Thanks, Alexa. Marion County detectives are investigating a murder case in Dunellen. The body was found yesterday near Walnut Street. The sheriff's office is not releasing the name of the victim until their family is notified. If you have any information about this case, call Detective John Lytle at 352-369-6715.
The Gainesville Police Department has released an update on the hit-and-run case that killed a biker on Monday. Police have identified a silver Volvo VC made between 2016 and 2022 as the car that hit the biker. According to the department's public information officer, a lot of debris was found at the scene from both the bicycle and the Volvo, leading to the police's announcement. The police have not identified the victim, and the public is still wondering who this person could be, but they're still investigating further. The accident took place Monday morning, and the victim was later discovered by a passerby.
The North Florida Hospital is hosting its annual pond lighting event. However, WUFT's Kennedy Mason tells us things look a little different this year. Right, Kennedy?
Yes, Ophelia, there are changes this year and some Gainesville residents are feeling left out. I talked to one longtime attendee who feels connected to this holiday event and was hoping things would stay the same. Christmas songs and bright lights at the North Florida Hospital touch the Gainesville community.
You get behind all the lights and you can just see them reflecting off the water, and you can start to see the lights dance to music. 18-year-old Maddie Quire attends the pond lighting event every year. It was kind of a tradition with my mom to go the first night with my sister, and then when I kind of got older, middle school, high school, I went with my friends every year. Maddie told me the lighting means friends, family, and fellowship. I have a twin sister actually, and we, as little kids, we kind of fought a lot, which is kind of normal, but I think definitely during the holiday time and when we do these traditions, it brought us closer. A beloved tradition that has been around longer than she's been alive.
Pond lighting has really been a huge historical event for our community.
Except this year, the hospital is making it private for employees. NFH's Director of Communications, Lauren Letillier, says the hospital wants to honor its heroes this season.
We've decided since the COVID pandemic that we wanted to make this extra special for our colleagues and our medical staff.
NFH has been working for months to put up 150,000 lights for the community to enjoy. Now, in just 2 days, these lights will be shining bright and this music will be playing loud for all to see and hear. After being held virtually for the past 2 years due to the pandemic, Maddie and her loved ones were excited to experience it in person once again. Like other members of the community, they wanted their invite this year.
I definitely think I'm a little sad because my sister doesn't live in Gainesville anymore, and she was looking forward to coming and going to the light show.
The event is reserved for staff, however the lights will remain up for people to enjoy. And although Maddie may not get to enjoy the ceremony in person, she still gets to come here to view what brings her the Christmas cheer. This 2-hour event will be held for the staff at 7 p.m. on Friday. Despite this event only being for healthcare workers, the hospital will not be checking IDs or throwing out anyone else who comes.
Thank you for that update, Kennedy. And hey, Ophelia, I heard that there was a basketball game tonight.
Actually, there's 2 games tonight at the O-Dome. WUFT sports reporter Julianna Reichenbach is there to tell us more about who's going to head-to-head tonight. Julianna?
Where the Florida women's basketball team is about to tip off. The Prairie View A&M Panthers are in town for part 1 of a basketball doubleheader. The UF women's team comes back from St. Pete, where they went 2-0 over the Thanksgiving break, to move to 6-1 on the season. A big reason why is senior transfer Lelena Correa. She's averaging 18.1 points per game to lead the team, and now the Gators face the 3-3 Prairie View A&M Panthers. But after that, don't go away, the men's basketball team is back too, and they are probably very glad to be back from Portland, Oregon. Florida head coach Toe Godden's squad went 1-2 in the Phil Knight Legacy Tournament and capped it off with an 84-55 blowout loss to West Virginia. Golden sat sophomore guard Kawasi Reeves for 2 games amid what the coach now says was a mismanagement of the rotation on his end. So we'll see about that. But stepping up in the bright spot for the tournament, junior guard Trey Bonham. He scored 23 and 19 points in 2 games for the Gators. Tip-off versus Florida A&M is set for 8 p.m. Reporting live from Exec Tech Arena, I'm Julianna Reichenbach.
Thanks, Julianna. Well, House Democrats just elected a new leader. Who it is and what that could mean for the upcoming legislative session after the break.
And the Senate passed a landmark bill Tuesday. More on that historic piece of legislation when we return on First at 5. Stick around.
You're watching WUFT-TV News.
Welcome back. Marion County resident Kelly Meggs is one of 5 Oath Keepers found guilty of various charges by the Justice Department related to their actions at the Capitol on January 6th. CNN's Paula Reed tells us about how the Justice Department is holding these rioters accountable.
Stuart Rhodes, the leader of the far-right Oath Keepers militia, and one of his subordinates, Kelly Meggs, were convicted of seditious conspiracy Tuesday, the most serious charge brought so far in any of the more than 900 criminal cases stemming from the Capitol attack. Rhodes, Meggs, and 3 other defendants, Jessica Watkins, Kenneth Harrelson, and Thomas Caldwell, were all convicted of obstructing an official proceeding and several other charges.
I think that the character of January 6th is now finally sinking into the whole country.
The Justice Department alleged that the Oath Keepers conspired to forcibly stop the peaceful transfer of power and plotted to attack the U.S. Capitol on January 6th. The trial, the first of 3 seditious conspiracy cases, was a major test of the Justice Department's ability to hold January 6th rioters accountable. The lead prosecutor told the jury in his closing statement that Rhodes and his subordinates claimed to be saving the republic, but they fractured it instead. The evidence presented at trial revealed how Rhodes, a former Army paratrooper with a law degree from Yale, wrote 2 public letters urging then-President Trump to invoke the Insurrection Act, which would give the president the power to call up militants to help him remain in power.
If the fight comes, let the fight come. Let Antifa go. If they go kinetic on us, then we'll go kinetic back on them. I'm willing to sacrifice myself for that. Let the fight start there, okay? Now, give President Trump what he needs, frankly. If things go kinetic, good. If they blow bombs up and shoot us, great, because that brings the president his reason and rationale for dropping the Insurrection Act.
Prosecutors said Rhodes placed a quick reaction force of heavily armed Oath Keepers at a Comfort Inn in Arlington County, Virginia, ready to rush their weapons to Washington if needed. On the day of the insurrection, Rhodes remained outside the Capitol.
We presented a case which showed through evidence and testimony that Mr. Rhodes did not commit the crime of seditious conspiracy. There was no evidence introduced to indicate that there was a plan.
The House of Representatives Democrats met this morning to elect a new leader. Hakeem Jeffries is selected to succeed Nancy Pelosi in January. He ran unopposed as minority leader for the next Congress. Jeffries will be the first black lawmaker to lead a party in Congress. He represents a generational change from the current group of House Democratic leaders who are all 3 decades older than him. He became the first chairman of the Democratic Caucus in 2019, making him the youngest member serving in leadership.
The Senate passed a landmark same-sex marriage bill with support from both parties. The Respect for Marriage Act passed yesterday with unanimous support. It requires the federal government to recognize interracial and same-sex marriages. The bill must go to the House for one last vote before it makes its way to the president's desk. Biden says he looks forward to signing the bill into law. Well, luckily, I just missed the rain on my way into the newsroom today.
Yeah, I noticed a few little raindrops on our window, but I'm just hoping it'll be dry on my way home. So, Shawn, will it be dry here in Rainsville later?
Well, we had a line of thunderstorms pass through the Panhandle today after yesterday's big severe weather event. Gainesville didn't get the brunt of it, but there's still a lot to talk about after the break.
You're watching WUFT-TV News.
Hello everyone, I'm Shawn Humphrey. There was a squall line of storms passing through the southeastern United States yesterday. We saw earlier that big tornado outbreak over much of the southeastern states like Mississippi and Alabama. Very devastating for parts of the nation. And those storms made their way to Florida today, breaking into the Panhandle at around 6:30. This snippet of the radar showed it around 6:57. And then those storms start to dissipate as we get further and further into the day. But those severe thunderstorm warnings and tornado watches were still affecting parts of the Panhandle earlier today. And by the time we started feeling that rain in Gainesville, those storms were going away for good. So right now, dry in Gainesville, no watches or warnings, and it should be good heading into the next week. And one of those big threats for severe weather is hail, reported around 2 inches for hail size in parts of the nation. So that's about tennis ball size, a little bit under tennis ball size. So if you can imagine just a really just packed together solid piece of ice falling down, it's a very dangerous threat, and that's why some of these warnings have to be issued. What happens with hail is updrafts bring this water droplets up into these tall thunderstorm clouds, and then they sit there up high in the atmosphere. And because it's so cold up there, they collect, and there's more and more ice up to the point where gravity brings them down, and it becomes a danger for people like you and me. Now, tornadoes, another big threat yesterday, a huge threat yesterday, very devastating. Atmospheric instability is the name of the game for tornadoes. Wind shear usually breaks up storms like hurricanes that we see here in Florida, but for tornadoes, it's their best friend. That wind shear pushing the air at upper atmospheric levels faster and faster, and the more unstable it gets, the more of a problem it is for you and me. And tornadoes end up being a column of air that eventually gets pushed vertically. And when it gets pushed vertically, it's can be very devastating. Our 6-day outlook here in Alachua County in Gainesville, temperatures dropping in the early morning tomorrow, down to 54 degrees. That's our low. But as we get into next week, temperatures peaking at 80 degrees. And it seems pretty consistent, but not quite constant. Back to the desk.
Thanks, Shawn. As we reported at the top of the show, we have some breaking news within the Florida Gators football program.
Yes, Ophelia, a Gators quarterback might have some trouble with the law. Soon to find out more with Will Levenson after the break.
You're watching WUFT TV News.
Welcome to sports. I'm Will Levenson. We start with an update to breaking news out of the Florida Gators football program. The team's backup quarterback, Jalen Kitna, was booked into the Alachua County Jail at 3:20 this afternoon. Gainesville police say Kitna was arrested on charges relating to the transmission of child porn images. In a statement released this evening, the UAA said, quote, "We are shocked and saddened to hear of the news involving Jalen Kitna. These are extremely serious charges, and the University of Florida and the UAA have zero tolerance for such behavior. Jalen has been suspended indefinitely from the football program." As Julianna told you earlier, Gator women's basketball is set to tip off in just a few minutes from the O-Dome. Florida has won 4 consecutive and sits at 6-1 on the year, with Prairie View A&M on their home court tonight. Tip-off is set for 5:30 p.m. from Exact Tech Arena. Also at the O-Dome tonight, Gator men's basketball will hit the hardwood after the Gator women's game concludes. Coming off a blowout loss to West Virginia, Florida will look to get back on track against Florida A&M. With the Gators now 4-3 on the season, head coach Todd Golden said he just wants to see his team improve.
We got to keep getting better. You know, we have good potential. We've shown the capacity to be a good team. You know, and obviously the West Virginia game leaves kind of a sour taste in our mouths.
Tip-off is scheduled for 8 p.m. At the high school level, the Gainesville High School Hurricanes boys basketball team took down the P.K. Young Blue Wave to remain undefeated last night. It was a hotly contested affair throughout at the electric GHS Purple Palace. Feeding off the crowd, the Canes took down the Wave 57-54 to improve to 3-0 on the Young season and dropping P.K. Young to 0-2. Gainesville senior guard Theo Stevens was a man on a mission, leading all scorers with 22 points in the win. Stevens is determined to build off a stellar junior season in which he averaged 17.7 points per game last year. The Canes will look to stay hot on Friday as they hit the road to face an also undefeated Palatka squad. Meanwhile, for P.K. Young, they'll be in search of their first win next week when they face the Eastside Rams on Tuesday. After a wild college football season, we're just 1 week away from finding out who the top 4 teams will be. Last night, the College Football Playoff Committee unveiled its second-to-last rankings, and a new team was featured at the 4 spot. Following a big win over Notre Dame this weekend, USC entered the all-important top 4, moving up from 5 to 4. After upset losses from LSU and Clemson over the weekend, the top 6 looks like this heading into championship weekend. All top 4 teams, Georgia, Michigan, TCU, and USC, can clinch their ticket to the playoff with a win this weekend. Meanwhile, on the outside looking in, Ohio State and Alabama, boy, they'll need some help from the underdogs on a big championship weekend. That's it for sports.
Thanks, Will. Before we go, one last check on the weather.
Well, it's been a very rainy day. We had a rainy early afternoon after this squall line of storms made its way through Alachua County, but that line of storms had mostly dissipated by the time it reached us here in Gainesville. Despite that, some severe weather earlier today and yesterday in the Panhandle and much of the southeastern United States, and that cold front has brought a very significant temperature change. Even though these 24-hour temperature change is looking not quite as significant, we saw temperatures of 8 degrees. Not temperatures of 8 degrees, but a temperature change at minus 8 degrees earlier in Gainesville. But over these last few hours, it's changed a lot. Back to the desk.
Thanks, Shawn. BBC World News is next, and the PBS NewsHour is coming up at 7.
But as you know, your Florida local news is always on at WUFT.org. Have a great night.